Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." In the Gospel reading this morning, we get the story of Philip bringing Nathanael to Jesus, who is skeptical that anything of worth can come out of the small town of Nazareth. I wonder how often Nathanael's words would come back to haunt him as he got to realise the true significance of the man from Nazareth, who would change and influence the world for 2,000 years, and of course well beyond. The whole of this story can be read in John's Gospel, chapter 1, verses 43 to 51. From those early disciples, the mission of the church was born, and in Epiphany, this is a time when we especially look at mission. So let's think about just how Christianity spread across the world, or has spread across the world. Well, the proportion of the world's population who are Christian has remained fairly constant over the past century, about 33% higher than any other religion, and twice as much as those claiming to be non-religious. In 1910, 66% of the world's Christians lived in Europe. By 2017, about 26% lived in Europe, whereas the other 74% belonged to the rapidly growing churches, and I mean rapidly growing churches, of Africa, South America and Asia. Some of the changes have been taking place most dramatically in China. So let's take China. Christianity first found its way into China in about 645 AD, when Syrian Christians travelled the Great Silk Road to trade, taking their faith with them. They learnt Chinese and they entered into the culture, but they didn't really set up any churches or missions. During the early 1600s, the Portuguese Jesuits won the respect of the emperors, but they never really attempted to engage with Buddhism or the Chinese culture. During the 19th and 20th centuries, Protestant missionaries arrived, and many Chinese people were drawn to them because of their work in helping with education and with medicine. Then came the 1930s and the revolution. Under Mao, missionaries were expelled and denominations were compelled to join a kind of state church. Those who would not were forced underground or faced intense persecution, and many Christians during this time died for their faith. After Mao died, it was found that many elderly Christians had survived, and the open church began to grow. And the underground churches which had managed to survive began to mushroom. The open church tried to help the underground churches to become registered and to protect them from attacks, but the free churches wanted to retain complete freedom of worship and rejected any collusion between church and state. This was largely because the Communist Party would allow no unregistered church to have more than 24 members. To avoid this hurdle, most underground churches would split whenever they had more than 24 members. There was a constant hunger and a search for Bibles written in Chinese, and actually there still is. And although there's a serious lack of educated church leaders, there are now estimated to be around 67 million baptized Christians in China, up from about 1 million 50 years ago, and more than the membership of the Communist Party. Out of a total population of about 1.3 billion, this means that around 19% of the population of China are Christian, and there are about 1.5 times more Christians in China than there are in the UK. The only countries with more Christians in their populations are the USA, Brazil, Mexico, Russia, the Philippines, and Nigeria. It's estimated that 6 new Protestant churches open in China every day. Perhaps one day there may be Chinese missionaries sent to darkest Europe to try and reconnect people with their faith. The Christian message is, of course, one of love and hope, something which we all need, especially in difficult times. And Christianity has helped people through some of the darkest of times over the past 2,000 years. And the words of the verses of the Psalms and the words of the prophets before that have helped people in dire times. We worship in many different ways and in a variety of places. There are countries in our world where it is downright dangerous for people to meet and worship together. And if caught doing so, they may face persecution, imprisonment, or even death. But they still meet to worship together, or just simply to stand on sacred ground in a sacred place and to be able to talk with God in their own way. Perhaps why Christianity is thriving in some parts of our world, and especially in China, is that the church and the people are able to connect in simple ways, so that people can actually see in their daily lives the love of a God who can rise above selfishness and self-interest, a God who is selfless, giving and forgiving, a God whose church is there, a God whose church is open for all people in all their need and at all time, a church that is the people. Philip invited Nathanael to come and see, and Nathanael walked in. We're reminded of our giving God in each Holy Communion service that we take part in, when we hear the words of Christ as he broke the bread at his Last Supper. Take, eat. This is my body broken for you and for many. Do this in remembrance of me. Jesus said to Philip, I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son